Well, thank you, Darla. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you to the Saskatoon Chamber of Commerce. And thank you, Tim, not only for that more than kind introduction, but thank you to you and Cameco for what you do each and every day in this province on the corporate side, and also what you do each and every day for this province on the community side. You mentioned the Touchdown for Dreams. I think of the Cameco Hockey Day of Saskatchewan, all of the different initiatives that you personally, your staff personally, and the broader company are involved with. That's how our communities are built in Saskatchewan. That's how they always have been built, is by people lending their time, lending their resources to build the great province that we have. It's a true honor for me to be here this morning with each of you. I want to thank you for coming. I also want to welcome all of my colleagues on both sides of the aisles from the government of Saskatchewan. As you know, we are in our assembly is sitting right now, and I want to thank each of them for making time to come here this morning. Many of the government MLAs had a hand in putting together the information and the plan for growth that we are going to release here this morning, and I want to thank them for their work over the course of the last number of months and even beyond that in the formation of this strategy for our province, this predominantly an economic strategy for our province. MLAs have canvassed their constituents on ideas for how we can keep our great province of Saskatchewan moving in the right direction, and I would say that we have received some excellent feedback from industry, some excellent feedback from communities, and most importantly, some excellent feedback from constituents across the province, constituents that we collectively represent, and that feedback is going to has helped shape this document, but will help shape government decisions into the future. I also want to thank you all for coming out on, this morning's quite nice, a November morning. Last week I was saying this is a beautiful January morning in November, but the weather has smartened up somewhat. So I know each and every one of you in this room is very busy, and there are many claims on your time, and I want to thank you, and I'm very grateful that you've chosen to be here this morning. I know we've all had a busy week. I've had a busy week. Tuesday morning, I had the opportunity to be in Ottawa to meet with the Prime Minister, and contrary to what some renowned columnists may have suggested, I did not go to Ottawa looking for a fight. I listened very closely to what our Prime Minister had to say on election night about hearing the frustrations of the people of the province of Saskatchewan, and I went to Ottawa to put forward some constructive proposals on behalf of the people, the industries, and the jobs in this province. Proposals that would be beneficial in beginning to address some of the identified frustrations. And I was genuinely interested in what the Prime Minister's plan would be for addressing these frustrations. And as I said, what I heard was disappointing. It was more of the same. There was nothing new that was offered, nor did he commit to any of the initiatives that we had put forward. Now, that's not what I'm here to talk about today. So I'm going to leave that for now. But in the days ahead, our government will be exploring ways to exert more of our provincial autonomy on behalf of the people that we represent in this province. The topic at hand here this morning, and let me begin with one of the most crucial issues that is facing our province today. Something that is top of mind for most of us in this room, many of us in this city, and most certainly the majority across the province, and that, my friends, is the Western Final this weekend. It's only 3 sleeps away. And I hope you're with me when we say that the growth priority for November has to be winning one more Grey Cup. In all seriousness, the Riders, our beloved Riders, had an incredible season, and I don't think at the beginning of the season many of us expected it. We were very fortunate in this province that we found, only in this province can you talk about your team as being part of the province, but we found a quarterback in Cody Fajardo. A great quarterback, but I would say for those that have met him or follow him on social media that he is an even better person. And I think the team is positioned to do very well. They have talent on the field, they have good coaching, they have a strong organization, they have a beautiful stadium, and they have, for certain, the best fans in the nation. All the ingredients are most certainly there for success. And I think there's a lesson for each of us in the Riders' success this particular year. A lesson that is relevant to our business here today. In life, like in football, the unexpected can often happen. And we know that all too well in this province. Our economy today is more diversified than ever, but it still remains a resource-based economy. There is going to be ups and downs in the economy in Saskatchewan, as Tim mentioned. Some years you'll be combining in the snow like we were this year. Other years you're going to have your crop off in the first week of September and things will go quite smoothly. Our fortunes in Saskatchewan have a tendency to fluctuate. Knowing this, our responsibility, ladies and gentlemen, in government, in business, in football at times, but in every sector across this province is to do what's necessary to keep Saskatchewan strong and resilient for the longer term, to take the longer view, so that we can withstand the adversity that comes our way from time to time, so that we can take advantage of the opportunities when they arise, just like our Rough Riders have this year. In Saskatchewan, we have made tremendous progress over the course of the last decade or so. You've done a terrific job in this community. But we have more work ahead of us to ensure that Saskatchewan continues to have a strong economy that will support strong communities and support strong families. And that is what brings us together here this morning to answer three basic questions. Where will that growth come from in the years ahead? How can we ensure that growth will happen? And why would we want our province to grow in the first place? How, where, why? That's the essence of the plan that we are presenting here today, a new growth plan for a new decade in Saskatchewan. A growth plan with two overarching goals: to grow the province's population by 1.4 million people and to create 100,000 new jobs by the year 2030. The where, the how, the why, that is our focus. I'm just going to begin with this proviso. I'm going to cover a lot of territory here this morning. This will be a policy-based speech, and I may violate Lord Reading's advice on speeches, which was this: always be shorter than anybody in the crowd dared to hope. But even so, I'm not going to be able to get to everything in our plan for growth, so I want to encourage you to visit the saskgrowthplan.ca for details, and the full document will be released online there. But more importantly, to the where, the how, and the why. And let's take the last one first, the why. Why would we want growth in this province in the first place? Well, it may seem obvious to you and I at times, but it isn't always to everyone. In the last decade or so, this province, communities in this province have changed. Our communities are busier. Our communities have grown. Our province has grown. And we know there are challenges that come with this growth. And we have to respond as best as we can, and I think in many cases we have. But against these challenges, we have to weigh the enormous benefits of that growth. When we unveiled the first growth plan in 2012, we said that broadly shared prosperity is a good thing for Saskatchewan and our residents. And we make that same assertion today. We make that assertion unapologetically. Growth is good. Growth supports the quality of life in our province. Growth allows us to help and to protect the most vulnerable among us. Growth enables us to provide opportunity for young people so that they stay in Saskatchewan and build their careers and raise their families right here at home. We included some ambitious goals in the first growth plan, and we made significant headway meeting many of those goals. We wanted the population to grow by 1.2 million by 2020. And we may fall actually slightly short of that goal. But I would suggest that this was the most successful initiative in the original growth plan, as today this province sits at 1,170,000 people. They call your and my community home, and this represents the largest sustained period of population growth in this province in over 8 decades. People have come to Saskatchewan because there is an opportunity here. There are jobs here. More than 80,000 new jobs that have been created since 2007. Those jobs are created because of what you are doing in your community. And while we have experienced some headwinds in recent years, headwinds on our economy, last Friday, the most recent jobs report indicated that there was 11,000 jobs created in this province year over year. We have now seen in this province 15 consecutive months of job growth. And today, we have an unemployment rate that is below the national average. The recipe of success continues to work in Saskatchewan. In the last growth plan, we set a goal of investing $2.5 billion by the year 2016, and we were able to surpass that goal because of a growing economy. We invested $3.7 billion in infrastructure over that time period. In total, since 2007, we have invested now over $30 billion in infrastructure between government and the Crown corporations. That means new schools. That means new hospitals, new long-term care homes, new power plants, 14,000 kilometers of highways built or repaired to keep not only our goods moving out of this province for sale, but to keep our families safe when they commute between communities. Because of growth, we were able to build new bridges in this city of Saskatoon, new overpasses in Warman and Martinsville, and ladies and gentlemen, because of the growth of this province, we were able to build right here in this city with the help of many of you in this room, many of you in this community and across the province, and with the help of individuals like Jim Pattison, we were able to build a brand new children's hospital right here in Saskatoon. That, my friends, is the why. The dividends of growth are around us each and every day. So where is that growth going to come from in the next decade? Well, in part, the sectors that have drove our economy for the last decade are also going to drive our economy in the next decade. The energy sector, the mining sector, the agriculture sector, manufacturing, forestry, innovative and sustainable industries that will grow significantly, not only in the next decade, but for decades to come with the right policies and the right incentives in place. Industries that will grow while reducing their impact on our shared environment. But we're also building a new economy in Saskatchewan. Research and innovation, much of it taking place right in this city, is also transforming our economy. Our traditional industries are benefiting, and there are new industries that are emerging. The tech sector, ag biotech, the value-added processing, those sectors are all poised for significant growth in the coming decade. The traditional drivers of our economy and newly emerging industries, they all have this, I would say, in common. To varying degrees, they are dependent on international markets. So international engagement is a good place to start when we talk about the growth of our province and where that growth will come from in the future. In Saskatchewan, about 70% of our GDP is export dependent. It's the source of the creation of our wealth. Our exports are up almost 60% since 2007. Today we ship product to more than 150 countries around the world, including Japan and South Korea and India. And that's why we were there just a few weeks ago on a trade mission, as Tim mentioned. We were actually storm stayed in Japan for a few days when a Category 5 typhoon hit the island, a Typhoon Hagibis. Actually, we were in a restaurant there that evening, and we were watching the typhoon out the window in a very safe place. This was a serious event when an earthquake hit. And I asked the waiter, I said, "What is going on?" He said, "Well, it's an earthquake." I said, "I realize that it's an earthquake, but how many natural disasters do you need at a time in this country?" But I would also say that our hosts on each of these trips, but most particularly during our time in Japan and during the evening of that typhoon, our hosts were so hospitable and they were so kind, even as they were dealing with a very serious crisis all on their own, as the city was shut down. They treated us like old friends. And I think that speaks to the importance of the relationship that we have. Relationships are person to person. Relationships are business to business. Relationships are government to all of those. And we need to be out in the world engaging with our partners. We need to be out in the world building on those relationships at every level. We have to be active, particularly at a time when we face significant trade barriers and protectionist tendencies in this world that are arising in many cases in some of the major markets where we are active. For the most part, much of this activity that we do is coordinated by officials at the Ministry of Trade and Export and Development, a new ministry that has been created over the course of the last 2 years. But we also need to continue to work with our business partners. We need to continue to work very closely with our post-secondary institutes here in the province. And I want to thank each of the presidents, Peter and Vian and Larry, for attending both in Japan and Korea on this latest mission, because there are opportunities for us to leverage our research and our education, our post-secondary education relationships, to further our trade relationships in these markets. Our post-secondary partners, those three alone, have 568 active agreements with post-secondary partners around the world. What a strength for us to leverage. We have students training around the world in other post-secondary institutes because of these agreements. We have students from these countries where we do business, that are training right here in our city because of the relationships that our post-secondary institutes have worked on. We need to continue to work closely with the Saskatchewan Trade and Export Partnership, or our STEP partnership, who are also in each of those markets with us. We also call upon the expertise of our Canadian embassies around the world and our consulates. But there is a missing element here. Right now, Saskatchewan has one trade office. That trade office is located in Shanghai, China. This is going to change. Today, I'm pleased to announce that the government of Saskatchewan is going to open up 3 new trade and investment offices, one in Singapore, one in India, and one in Japan. We think a more robust presence in each of these international markets will be part of what enables us to meet our new growth plan objective, to increase the value of our exports by 50% in the next decade and to create thousands of jobs in the process. 100,000 to be exact. The new trade offices will connect Saskatchewan businesses with customers and will also promote the province to potential investors. Today, we are also announcing the hiring of Harper & Associates to help us further our trade agenda in key markets, particularly in the market of Asia. The principal of this company is the former Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Prime Minister Harper is experienced, he is knowledgeable, and he is well connected, and he is on a first-name basis with many of the leaders around the world. And he gets around the world. In the last few months alone, the former Prime Minister has visited China. He has visited Israel twice. He's been in Japan, he's been in Taiwan, he's been in England, he's been in Hungary, he's been in the United States, he's been in Germany, he's been in Albania, and he's been in the United Arab Emirates. And tomorrow, our Trade Minister, Jeremy Harrison, was going to leave for India. He is leading a trade delegation to that country, and Prime Minister Harper is going to accompany him on that delegation. There are a number of trade issues in India that need to be addressed, and we are hopeful that our delegation, alongside former Prime Minister Harper, can help us make our cases at the very highest levels, not only in India on this trip, not only on this particular mission, but we expect that Prime Minister Harper is going to help us increase our exports to the more than 150 countries where we do business each and every day. And in this process, we will support the good jobs, the careers, and the quality of life that we have become accustomed to in this province. Folks, I mentioned in there that we are going to set a goal of increasing our exports by 50% by 2030. That assumes, of course, that we are going to be able to boost our production in our primary industries to meet this increased demand. And I think we can do that. We have done it in the past. These are some pretty ambitious production targets in the new growth plan, and you'll see that if you visit the growth plan online. There's a lot of detail in that document, as I said, at sasgrowthplan.ca. But I want to touch upon a couple of other sectors, important sectors, in this 50% export target. And I want to begin with agriculture and value-added processing. In agriculture, we've set a target of increasing crop production to 45 million tons a year. Some of this may seem somewhat aggressive, but consider what our producers have done since 2007. Primary crop production has increased from about 23 million, it increased more than 23 million tons since 2007 to more than 35 million tons today. This past year, despite bad weather, despite an early snowfall, we expect to take off 37 million tons in this province, the second highest harvest on record in Saskatchewan. And much of that credit goes to our producers, of course, who are constantly looking for ways to boost the yield, boost the quality, and boost the productivity. Our focus in government has been on supporting those producers, supporting those value-added processors through innovation and research. And that support is going to continue. And much of that research takes place right here in the city of Saskatoon at places like the Crop Development Centre, at Ag West Bio, at the Food Development Centre. Irrigation remains on the radar of the ag industry and this government. Irrigation in Saskatchewan today is underutilized. And we plan to work, and are working right now very closely with the industry, so that we are able to attract investment and to maximize Saskatchewan's irrigation capacity and maximize Saskatchewan's irrigation potential. The objective, of course, is first of all to attract this investment. That process is underway to expand additional irrigation acres here in the province, but we also want to look at the opportunity to infill about 85,000 acres of irrigation that is sitting there and ready here in Saskatchewan. And we're going to introduce a couple of new growth incentives in agriculture to spur this along. One is going to be the agricultural technology incentive to support the application of emerging digital technologies in agriculture. Saskatchewan companies are already doing much of this work in this space. DOT or DOT technology is producing autonomous power units for seeding and for spraying applications. Precision AI makes autonomous drones for spraying as well. Saskatoon's Field Analytics produces mobile soil probes for instantaneous soil analysis using AI, or artificial intelligence. RBC says these advancements are part of the fourth agricultural revolution, a revolution that will be powered by data and that could boost Canada's GDP by $11 billion. Significant when you think of Saskatchewan's role in Canadian agriculture. And that revolution, I should say, needs to be based out of this province. With our tradition in innovation in agriculture and our growing tech sector, Saskatchewan should be at the very forefront of this revolution, and we will be. This new incentive is going to support work already underway, and it's going to attract more investment to this province. The other growth incentive relates to fertilizer production in Saskatchewan, and there will be a tax credit to encourage the production of fertilizer in Saskatchewan so that we will have a reliable supply of fertilizer for our producers, yes, point one, but also so that we can provide career opportunities in this industry for our young people, the young people in our communities. There's unrealized potential in this area of nitrogen fertilizer production and others, and we think this incentive is going to enable us to unlock some of that potential. Ladies and gentlemen, we have also set clear goals in the value-added processing sector, the urban agriculture sector, if you will. This is an area that is ripe for growth. Currently, companies in Saskatchewan process about 40 to 45% of our canola crop, generating about $3 billion in revenue, the largest of those processing facilities just outside of this city in the community of Clavet. So this is good, but there's additional opportunity here in our urban agriculture sector. So we are targeting to increase that to 75% of our canola crop to be processed in Saskatchewan, and that would result in another $2 billion in annual revenues into our communities by the year 2030, and the creation of hundreds of new jobs. So we're going to be considering what opportunities we can act on to encourage the expansion of oilseed processing in Saskatchewan. In this province, we also grow a lot of peas. 50% of the dry peas in Canada are grown right here in Saskatchewan. But only 10% of those peas are processed here. If we are able to increase that to 50%, we could generate another $1 billion in annual revenue, and we can generate more jobs in Saskatchewan. And one way to attract more investment into this sector is to beat the drum just a little bit more vigorously than we even have been. For example, more people around this nation, in this province as well, should know about Verdian Foods in Vanscoy, James and Susie Cameron's investment. And ladies and gentlemen, they are big investors in pea processing in Saskatchewan. 2 years after that announcement, I'm still amazed that there are people that don't realize the size of investment that they have made here. But we can't take it for granted that this investment is common knowledge outside of the province. We should leverage that investment. So we're going to be looking for opportunities to enhance our investment attraction efforts in all of value-added processing. We need to continue to and enhance our opportunities to tell Saskatchewan's story, tell it more effectively, and tell it to a larger audience around the world, and we're going to do just that. In the broader sector of natural resources, energy, mining, forestry, the future, I would say, is just as promising. The new growth plan includes a goal of increasing our oil production in this province to 6,000 barrels a day from where we are now of just below 500,000 barrels a day, up to 600,000. That production increase would continue a trend that has now been underway for some time. Saskatchewan resource companies are increasing their production, and while they're doing that, they are actually reducing their environmental footprint. This, again, we need to share this story. Consider the new thermal enhanced oil recovery projects that are operating in the northwest of this province. They use a smaller surface area than conventional projects. They reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 50% while improving the recovery rates of the oil by up to 45%. 45% more oil, 50% less emissions seems like a fairly strong record to me. Now, there are factors given outside of our control that play a role in determining whether our energy producers are able to grow with the sustainable production that they have. Better prices, for sure, would be advantageous. More pipelines would be key to growing that production. More enlightened federal policies would be overdue. But there are factors also that are within our control. And we will support opportunities that are going to allow our Saskatchewan energy industry to grow. Already, one of the most sustainable energy industries in the world. In this province, we have a competitive royalty regime that rewards innovation in this sector and others, a system that encourages more sustainable practices, and that's arriving with the investment in the Northwest. But that isn't going to change. We're always eager to work with the industry to further reduce the regulatory barriers that we have, and that will continue. And here's something else that isn't going to change: our efforts to boost value-added production in the energy industry. We spoke of agriculture. We're doing the very similar initiative in energy. Last year, we introduced a new oil and gas processing investment incentive. That's a 15% transferable royalty credit for a greenfield or a brownfield investment. And I would say that investment has already paid off in this province. Paid off with a $20 million investment in the community of Moose Jaw. A $20 million investment that was made by Gibson Energy. Gibson is expanding their production at their plant in Moose Jaw by about 30% in volume, with no increase, zero increase in greenhouse gas emissions. The company's greenhouse gas emissions per barrel of oil produced have actually, with this investment, have actually dropped 20 to 25% for every barrel coming out of that plant, not the incremental barrels only. This is an example of what we are doing in Saskatchewan to address climate change. We are doing so many things that have a very global impact on a global challenge. We continue to advance carbon capture technology. We continue and will increase our efforts in researching small modular nuclear reactors in Saskatchewan to support our uranium mining industry. Saskatchewan uranium is used to generate clean energy that avoids millions of tons of greenhouse gas emissions around the world each and every day, each and every year. And we need to do everything possible to work with our industry, to work with our customers, so that we are able to expand our uranium sales from this province, which consequently are the grand total of Canadian uranium sales, and we need to do everything we can to expand those uranium sales to $2 billion by the year 2030. Now, this is an increase. Ladies and gentlemen, nuclear power has to be deployed in a big way around this world if we are to reduce emissions in any significant way. There are today 450 nuclear reactors that are operating around the world, and there's another 50 that are under construction, most of them in Asia. In China, they're building 12 nuclear reactors. In India, 7 nuclear reactors. We were just in Japan, and they have 17 nuclear reactors that are already operating or in the process of restarting. Saskatchewan is well positioned to support more nuclear power, more global nuclear power, with the largest reserves of high-grade uranium ore in the world, and world-class companies that are already operating here, like Cameco and Orano. The growth plan is also bullish on our targets for potash sales. We want to go from today about $6 billion in sales to $9 billion in sales by 2030. Despite the short-term challenges that we know and are working with the industry on today, the medium and long-term outlook is strong for the Saskatchewan potash industry. The world's population is expected to increase. It's expected to actually reach just under 10 billion, $9.8 billion people, not dollars, by the year 2050. And each of those people have to be fed. And we hope to be part of that process. Here we are in Saskatchewan, 9.8 billion people on the earth by the year 2050, and here we are in Saskatchewan with the largest potash reserves in the world, the most sustainable producers of potash in the world, and we must remember that. We produce the cleanest potash in the world from a climate change perspective. We do it with world-class companies like Nutrien, like Mosaic, K+8, K+S, BHP. To support the growth of these companies, our uranium companies, our companies that are exploring for diamonds in this province, exploring for copper, for cobalt, for gold, for nickel and zinc and other products. Today I'm pleased to announce that the reinstatement of the PST exemption for exploratory and downhole drilling activity in the mining sector is back on. Thank you, Pam Schwann. We heard from the industry. We heard from Pam Schwann that the PSG changes brought in 2 years ago were putting a damper on our exploration activity, thereby putting a damper on our opportunity for the future. Exploration, drilling, it's necessary for the industry to not only find new deposits and to develop new mines that will create good jobs in our communities and generate revenue ultimately for the government, which goes back into the why. We're hopeful, and we know that this policy change will encourage more exploration. It will encourage more development of greenfield properties here in the province. In forestry, we continue to push forward with an ambitious target of doubling the production by the year 2030 to $2.2 billion. Exports of $1.2 billion in that sector by the end of the next decade. And ladies and gentlemen, I should note this about our forestry industry in the province, an unsung hero. I should note that 30% of the workforce in our forestry industry, in our forestry sector, in our communities, 30% of this workforce is Indigenous in Saskatchewan. This compares to 4% across the nation of Canada. There are numerous Indigenous-owned companies that are very active in the forestry industry, including North Sask Forest Products in Meadow Lake, the largest First Nations-owned sawmill in the nation, owned and operated by the Meadow Lake Tribal Council. We see Indigenous employment. We see Indigenous ownership is increasing in not only the forestry sector, but in the resource sector generally, in energy, in mining, in forestry, yes. This is a trend that we need to support in every way possible. We want to encourage and we will work towards greater Indigenous participation in all areas of our economy, building on the enormous progress that we have already seen over the course of the last decade in the north with partners like Cameco, in the forestry industry, as I have mentioned. In our mining sector in general, in this province, 2,300 Indigenous workers are participating in that industry. There is $650 million that is procured from Indigenous-owned businesses in 2017 alone. This is a strong record. This is a record for us to build on. And in the growth plan, we are calling for more First Nations equity participation in pipeline projects, in export infrastructure, and in energy and resource development here in the province. This is an opportunity for each of us and all of us, and we need to take hold of it. This has to be a priority for Saskatchewan. Folks, I want to mention two other sectors. In manufacturing, the growth plan target is to boost our exports by 50%. Frankly, I think that's a conservative target. Whether it's the steel and metal fabricators in the north end of this city of Saskatoon, or agriculture, machinery manufacturers in the Humboldt area, or in places like Frontier or Yorkton, or manufacturers that are serving the energy sector, like Evraz, for example, in Regina. Saskatchewan's manufacturing sector is sustainable. Again, yes, it's innovative, it's ambitious, and I would say that it's growing very, very fast. In government, we are going to do everything that we can to ensure that that growth continues and increases. We want to work with the industry to expand markets and to ensure the tax and regulatory environment is competitive. And finally, a word about innovation, building the economy of the future, if you will, which is already underway. I've already discussed the impact of our tech sector in agriculture. We have an emerging tech sector in this province. It's coming on actually like gangbusters in Saskatchewan, and much of that growth has taken place and is centered right here in this city of Saskatoon, home to the second fastest growing tech hub in the country outside of the Waterloo area. That is something, my friends, we can be very proud of in this city and this province. More than 8,000 people employed in Saskatoon alone. Millions of dollars of investment is pouring in to this city, into that tech sector each and every day. Companies like 7 Shifts, like Aura, BH Tech, Vendasta, Solido, Salon Scale Technologies, Coconut Software, they have put Saskatchewan's tech sector on the map. My friends, innovation advances when we can create environments where people and ideas can connect. And that's what's happening at CoLabs right here in Saskatoon and at the Connexus Cultivator in Regina. We're providing opportunities for success through our Patent Box incentive, through the Saskatchewan Technology Startup Incentive, and the Made in Saskatchewan Technology Program. We will continue to consider additional opportunities to ensure the growth of innovation in this province. As we look ahead over the course of the next 10 years, I think it's fair to say this. Every sector in our economy is going to be a tech sector, part of the tech sector. Agriculture will be part of the tech sector. Mining, energy, manufacturing, forestry, all will be part of the tech sector. Technology and innovation will ensure all of our industries remain globally competitive. Each of those industries in Saskatchewan will remain globally competitive, in part because they will be part of the tech sector. Of course, competitiveness is crucial to the economic growth anywhere in the world, but most particularly in Saskatchewan. So on the issue of taxes, on the issue of regulations and on government spending, our objective is to ensure that Saskatchewan has every opportunity to remain competitive. Right now, our corporate tax rate in this province is not the lowest in the nation. It's in the nation. It's very close. It's slightly higher than some provinces, but we have no health premiums in Saskatchewan. We have no payroll tax, and we have competitive utility rates. And you remember just last year, the small business income threshold went from $500,000 to $600,000, the highest threshold in the nation. We understand the importance of competitive taxes in our province, the importance of competitive taxes to small and medium-sized businesses in particular. These are the companies that are the beating heart of the economy in Saskatchewan, because in this province, small business is big business. And today, there has never been a better time to start a business in Saskatchewan. This is an entrepreneurial province. We want people to start a business, and we want them to grow a business here. And one of the ways for us to encourage that is to cut the regulatory burden, to focus on reducing red tape. And I want to thank the folks at the Canadian Federation of Independent Business for holding our feet to the fire on red tape and the reduction of it. We've done some good things at the urging of small businesses in this province, and our estimate is that the red tape reduction initiatives that are already underway are saving small businesses in Saskatchewan between $10 and $20 million a year. But we can do more. In fact, we need to do more, and we will do more. We're going to appoint a business advisory panel from communities across the province to identify priorities for the province's red tape reduction committee, currently chaired by Jean Makowski. That panel meets on a regular basis, will continue to meet on a regular basis, so there will be constant scrutiny coming from the business community into the red tape reduction committee, directly into the government, and we welcome that scrutiny. Infrastructure is another important area where we can continue to support the competitiveness of our industries that are creating jobs in our communities across the province. And at the very top, I mentioned that we have invested $30 billion in infrastructure since 2017. Well, the objective of the new growth plan is to invest an additional $30 billion over the course of the next decade. And there is no shortage of places to invest in this province. We need hospitals. We need schools in communities right across this province, including in this community of Saskatoon. We need to upgrade our highways, continue to upgrade our highways, upgrade our thin membrane surface highways across the province. We need more passing lanes for the safe transportation of goods, yes, but for the safe transportation of our families. And we'll continue to enhance our intersections across this province, and we're going to invest $65 million specifically over just the next 5 years to ensure that our intersections are safer across this province as we go forward. More broadly, we need to continue to advocate for our industries as the federal government and the provinces plan national infrastructure projects. We have to strengthen our transportation ties in every direction, not just east and west, across this nation. That includes us looking at options to move more product south, on rail, on pipe, to continue to gain access to American markets and American ports. And we need to have a discussion about how we can move more of our goods north through Canada's Arctic port, the Port of Churchill. Ladies and gentlemen, I've covered a lot of ground here this morning, and I know you all have to get to work, but let me close with this. At the outset, I mentioned our football team, the Riders. Well, last month, the Riders celebrated a milestone. We all celebrated a milestone. A Rider legend actually celebrated a milestone himself in George Reed. He turned 80 years old. I was invited to his birthday party, and I wasn't able to make it. I truly regret that, because I did want to thank George in person. Not so much for what he did on the field so many years ago. I would thank him for that most certainly, but because that was just so incredible, what he did as a player. But I wanted to thank him for the example that he provides to all of us. George Reed is an extraordinarily gracious and generous man. And if you've met him, you know this. The list of organizations that he has supported across this province throughout his years of being here is remarkably long. In fact, there are few causes in this province that have not received the support of George Reed. George Reed understands better than most of us that the success of this province is a partnership that transcends generations, a partnership that is between us and those that came before us, and those that are yet to be born, that next generation. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a solemn obligation to the generations to come. We need to make the right decisions today to ensure that there is hope and that there is opportunity tomorrow. To ensure a future Saskatchewan has a strong economy, to support strong communities, and to support strong families. Together we can build a growing province, a prosperous, a confident, an optimistic Saskatchewan for our children and for their children. That's our job here today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming this morning.